Over the past 7 years or so since I got back into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, there have been a number of decks that I really fancied and enjoyed playing one way or another. My earliest example was dinosaurs, simply because I loved dinosaurs as a kid. And even today, I still enjoy playing them, more so now due to how improved upon the type got with the Dino Smashers Fury structure deck. But then I have the oddball favourite decks, you know what I mean. The decks that, despite their often non-existent win ratios in the competitive scene, I still wind up coming back to because of how much fun I have playing them. And since I just made a 101 of it, I thought that it would only be appropriate to take the time and talk about my favourite Synchro deck in this episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! 101 database. Introducing Flower Cardians. They are a series of Dark Warrior monsters used by Mr. Chojiro Enjoy Togematsu in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V anime, with their main goal being to turbo out the big Synchro boss monsters as quickly, and luckily, as possible. They are actually based off of the traditional card game of Japan, Korea and Hawaii, Hanafuda, and not only does this show in their artwork and stat lineup, but also in their playstyle. I'd explain more, but this video would be much longer than it already is, so feel free to look them up on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki. Despite the immense power shown in their Synchro monsters combined with their very unique playstyle, they are extremely luck dependent, requiring the player to constantly draw into more Guardian monsters or risk losing that drawn card. It's easily one of the hardest Synchro decks to master, if mainly due to this playstyle of theirs, but man, is it satisfying to watch your opponent choke the game away because they couldn't be bothered to read the cards. So allow me to take you on a guide of all the ins and outs of this very unique Synchro deck. Before we go into their monster lineup, it's worth talking about a key card of theirs first, that being Flower Gathering. This is a normal spell with a very simple and balanced effect. Special summon 4 Flower Cardian monsters with 100 attack and different names from your deck in attack position, but they have their effects negated, also they cannot be tributed for a tribute summon. You can only activate 1 Flower Gathering per turn. You cannot normal or special summon other monsters during the turn you activate this card, except Flower Cardian monsters. Okay, I may have over-exaggerated a little bit on the balanced part of this card, but it's still pretty nuts. Seeing that this archetype was released with 4 monsters that meet this card's criteria, you're easily going +3 off of its activation alone. And with the added bonus of other monsters in hand that can special summon themselves by tributing any other Flower Cardian, you'd be stupid to not play this. It's one of your primary combo starters and even an extender when combined with a certain Synchro of theirs. More often than not, you'll be maxing out on this card, though some players may find it acceptable to only play 2 instead. With that key card out of the way, we can now talk about the rest of the card lineup. So we start with Flower Cardian Pine. It's a level 1 Dark Warrior. Honestly have no idea how Hanafuda cards can be classified as warriors, but whatever I guess. Monster with 100 attack and defense, and if this card is normal summoned, draw 1 card, show it, then send it to the graveyard unless it is a Flower Cardian monster. You can only use this effect of Flower Cardian Pine once per turn. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, or if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to your graveyard, you can draw 1 card. Here we see the main gimmick of Cardians. They want you to draw into more Flower Cardian monsters in order to continue your combo, otherwise if you drew a non-Cardian, you would immediately lose that card. This basically turns Cardians into Draw Monster Cardo, the deck, with more emphasis on the Cardian monsters more than anything. Concerning Pine itself, it's one of your only 2 easy normal summons of the deck, thus making it a simple combo starter. I also appreciate that you do also get a draw should your opponent destroy it somehow, but then again you'd probably be dead at that point due to how easy the deck's combos can come crashing down, though I'll talk more about that point when covering the weaknesses. For now though, with Pine being your basic combo starter and also a target for gathering, you'll need to play 3 at all times. The next 3 monsters fall under a similar category as Pine, as they are all summonable off of Gathering, but also stand out from Pine in their own unique ways. These 3 monsters are the level 8 Flower Cardian Zebragrass, the level 11 Flower Cardian Willow, and the level 12 Flower Cardian Polonia. They all have 100 attack and defense and share the following effect. While you control a Flower Cardian monster with a level less than this card's, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot normal or special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except Flower Cardian monsters. Then, they all have their own unique effects to follow. Zebragrass on normal or special summon can let you shuffle any number of Cardians from your hand into the deck to draw the same number of cards. Willow, once per turn, can target and shuffle a Cardian from your graveyard into the deck to draw a card, and Polonia, if targeted for an attack, can negate the attack and end the battle phase before letting you draw a card. The fact they can all special summon themselves very easily works a ton of wonders, especially in the context of a Synchro deck. With Zebragrass being your archetypal magical mallet of sorts, it helps out with returning the Cardians you don't want to use back into the deck, so you can potentially draw better cards to use. Willow is by far the best of the bunch because of how easy it is to abuse its recycling effect, since it's not a hard once per turn and can even recycle another copy of itself. And Polonia? You'll only run it as either a target for gathering or to be easily special summoned, since most of the time you'll be giving the attacks rather than defending yourself from them. Zebragrass and Willow are obvious 3-ofs, while Polonia is best ran at no more than 2, should you choose to run it when taking a certain other monster into account. Since they're based off of Hanafuda cards, these 4 OG monsters all have upgraded forms to represent their 20-point counterparts. These monsters are the level 1 Pine with Crane, the level 8 Zebragrass with Moon, the level 12 Polonia with Phoenix, and the level 11 Tuna monster, Willow with Calligrapher. They all have 2000 attack and defense and share the following effects. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by tributing one Flower Cardian monster with the same level as this card's, except another copy of itself. If this card is special summoned, draw one card, and if you do, show it. Then, if it is a Flower Cardian monster, you can special summon it, otherwise send it to the graveyard. Then, for their unique effects, Pine with Crane lets you draw a card at the end of the battle phase if it battled, Zebragrass with Moon lets you draw a card if it destroyed an opponent's monster by battle, Polonia with Phoenix will draw you a card once per turn if it inflicted battle damage to your opponent, but Willow with Calligrapher on the other hand instead has the effect where, when this card is used as Synchro material, you can treat it and all other Synchro material that have a level as level 2 monsters. This effect of Calligrapher is in fact applied to all the Cardian Tuna monsters, allowing for much easier access to your high level and powerful Synchro monsters. For this reason, it's usually ran at 1 or 2 copies, due to another main deck Tuna monster the archetype later got. The other 3, on the other hand, would have been fine in the very early builds when all that was to work with was the support from Dragons of Legend Unleashed, but now that there's a lot more support cards to work with, it's not exactly worth running them. As to be expected, a Synchro deck has to have its own archetypal Synchro monster, and boy howdy, did they get some. The first of these big Synchros is Flower Cardian Light Shower, based off of the 4 Brights combination. It's a level 8 with 3000 attack and defense, requires 1 Tuna and exactly 3 non-tuners to summon, and has this effect. Your opponent cannot target Flower Cardian monsters you control with card effects, also those monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects. During your opponent's draw phase, if they draw a card or cards for their normal draw, inflict 1500 damage to your opponent. Once per turn during your opponent's end phase, activate one of these effects. Skip the draw phase of your next turn, or this card has its other effects negated until your opponent's next standby phase. Even though the Cardian Synchro monsters all have generic materials, they all must require a specific number of materials to match their point marks and number of cards needed to make them. But even with that said, Light Shower is still a frightening monster to deal with. Having Beelze level stats on a level 8 Synchro is already problematic for the opponent to deal with on its own, but the fact that it also turns your Cardians into Magispectors in terms of protection is pretty nutty. I don't know why they also slapped it with random burn damage to boot, but more power to you. And while it does pretty much force you to skip your entire draw phase to keep its best effects live, it doesn't exactly matter since you're still blowing through your entire deck in order to make and continue plays. An easy 2 to 3 of. The next support arrived in Invasion Vengeance, further boosting the playability of Cardians into being, well, actually playable. The first 3 monsters to come from this set are the level 7 Clover with Boar, the level 10 Maple with Deer, and the level 6 Tuna monster Peony with Butterfly. They all have 1000 attack and defense and share the following. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must first be special summoned from your hand by tributing one Flower Cardian monster except one with the same name as itself. If this card is special summoned, draw 1 card and if you do, show it. Then if it is a Flower Cardian monster, apply a unique effect, otherwise send it to the graveyard. For the unique effects, if you draw a Cardian monster by their effects, Clover with Boar can let you destroy one monster the opponent controls, Maple with Deer can destroy an opponent's spell or trap, and Peony with Butterfly, aside from having the Cardian Tuner effect, will let you look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, where you can then place them at the top or bottom of their deck in any order. Clover and Maple are both great because their destruction effects don't target, allowing you to bypass the effects of cards that prevent you from targeting them. And Peony is also fantastic, not just for being another tuner monster, but also for being able to potentially mess up with your opponent's next plays by arranging the top cards of their deck. Peony is very easily a 3 of, while the use of Clover and Maple, however, can vary from player to player, though I wouldn't advise maxing out on them. The next Synchro monster they got is Flower Cardian Boardfly. Based off of the 3 Brights combination, it's a level 6 with 2000 attack and defense, and requires a tuner and exactly 2 non-tuners to summon. If a Flower Cardian monster you control attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage. Once per turn, you can banish 1 Flower Cardian monster from your graveyard. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, your opponent cannot activate effects of cards in the graveyard, also they cannot special summon monsters from the graveyard. The timing of this card's release was pretty well done, seeing that the meta at the time was still filled with Burning Abyss and Cosmos. Heck, even the new contenders of Paleo Frogs would struggle a bit due to this card's graveyard lockdown. While it doesn't have as much attack as the other 2 primary Cardian Synchros, Boardfly is still very good. As long as you can lock out your opponent's graveyard during or at the end of your combo, then you should be pretty safe from there. But with the introduction of another level 6 Synchro, this card's usage isn't as abusable, so run it at no more than 2. For the spell and trap support from Invasion Vengeance, we begin with the normal spell, Flower Stacking. Choose 3 Flower Cardian monsters with different names from your deck, and place them on the top of your deck in any order. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Flower Cardian monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use this effect of Flower Stacking once per turn. I really don't need to say a lot here, as stacking pretty much speaks for itself. Provides great setup for your combos, and can even recover your resources in the next turn. Always run 3. Their next card is...
Look! Up in the sky! It's a bird!
It's a plane!
Super Koi Koi. It's a normal spell with this effect. Excavate the top 3 cards of your deck and special summon as many Flower Cardian monsters among them as possible, ignoring their summoning conditions, but their levels become 2 and they have their effects negated. Banish the remaining cards face down, and if you do, lose 1000 life points for each. You can banish this card from your graveyard and tribute 1 monster, special summon 1 Flower Cardian monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can only activate 1 Super Koi Koi per turn. The main idea for this card is to be used in conjunction with stacking, so you can get to your level 6 Synchros with ease. Though more often than not, you may wind up using this card blind due to how much this deck loves to brick. The second effect is also very welcome, as if you happen to have a full board, you can simply tribute an unnecessary Cardian to bring out a replacement one. You can even tribute monsters that have the same name as the Cardian you want to summon. Koi Koi is pretty good, but its usage mostly boils down to personal preference, and even at that, I wouldn't recommend maxing out on it. Their only trap card is the continuous trap Fraud Freeze. Once per turn, when your opponent special summons a monster or monsters from the hand, except during the damage step, you can return to the hand all monsters your opponent controls that were special summoned from the hand. If neither player controls a Flower Cardian Synchro monster, send this card to the graveyard. I mean, I understand why this effect is here, but it's just extremely impractical. It also doesn't work against monsters that were summoned from the extra deck or graveyard, making its worth even less worthwhile than ever. Add insult to injury, it blows itself up if you don't control a Cardian Synchro monster. Don't even bother with this one. The next main set, Raging Tempest, will give us what seemed to be the last batch of Cardian support, as well as completely ruining the game of Yu-Gi-Oh by including a cancerous Tier 0 format of a furry rat pandemic that would last for half the entire year, and even going into a brand new format where it would remain plaguing the world for far too long than it already should have, further plunging the world as we know it into complete and total chaos where everyone and their mothers will continue to spread their infectious and unsightly— Wait! Are you sure I'm talking about Zodiac here and not the actual pandemic we live in? Is this going to prevent me from getting monetized in the future? Flower Cardian Cherry Blossom with Curtain is a level 3 with 2000 attack and defense, cannot be normal summoned or set, and must first be special summoned by its own effect. You can reveal this card in your hand, draw 1 card, and if you do, show it. Then special summon this card if the drawn card is a Flower Cardian monster. Otherwise, send it and this card to the graveyard. During either player's damage step, when your Flower Cardian monster battles an opponent's monster, you can discard this card. Your battling monster gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. This is brilliant right here. A second low level target for Rhoda was something the deck really needed, and excels in its intended purpose as well. It's both a strong combo enable and extender, and even works well as the archetype's own little battle hand trap. An easy 3 of no matter where you look at it. The next card from this set is their biggest boss monster, Flower Cardian Light Flare. Based off of the 5 Brights combination, and also known for its Japanese name of Kakarot? Screw it. It's a level 10 Synchro with 5000 attack and 0 defense, requires 1 tuner and exactly 4 non-tuners to summon, and has these effects. Once per turn during either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell or trap card, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. If a Flower Cardian monster you control battles an opponent's monster, that opponent's monster has its effects negated during the battle phase only. If this face-up Synchro summon card is destroyed by battle, or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while its owner controls it, you can special summon 1 Flower Cardian Synchro monster from your extra deck except Flower Cardian Light Flare. All that hard work to get the right materials on board, and the payoff is definitely worth it. Spell and Trap negation is already a strong effect, but add on top of that an effect that stops the effects of monsters that battle your Cardians? This means it can super easily out monsters such as Ball Sword Dragon, or hilariously enough, an entire archetype in the form of super heavy samurais. Plus, it can even float into one of your weaker Cardian Synchros, preferably another Light Shower, should your opponent get rid of it by means that doesn't involve tributing. For these reasons, a board of Light Flare, Light Shower and Board Fly is the bare minimum a Cardian player wishes to accomplish within their turn, as it answers a healthy amount of options the opponent may have going forward. Light Flare is often best run at 3, though 2 is also perfectly fine if you want to experiment more with your extra deck. The final card from this set is the normal spell, Recardination. Target 1 Flower Cardian monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand, then you can special summon 1 Flower Cardian monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a Flower Cardian monster's effect, you can excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and if you do, you can add 1 excavated spell or trap to your hand. Place the remaining cards on the top of your deck in any order. They could have just given it the pseudo monster reborn effect and all would have been good, but the fact that they also gave it the beneficial effect of looking and stacking the top 5 cards of your deck should you happen to draw and lose it off of a Cardian monster's effect is absolutely brilliant. This is exactly what one would ask for in a Cardian support card. Never play any less than 3 no matter what. Now this would bring an end to the entire archetype, until Konami decided to throw in a random piece of support in the Dimension box, an OCG exclusive product. And the TCG would never get any of the cards from this set until over the course of many years, with a single piece of Cardian support being imported in Flames of Destruction, right in the middle of Master Rule 4, where the deck was literally unplayable due to the banning of Salt. Flower Cardian Moonflower Viewing, based off of the Views combination, is a level 6 Synchro Tuner monster with 2000 attack and defense, requires 1 tuner and 2 non-tuners to summon, and her effect reads: once per turn during your main phase, you can draw 1 card and if you do, show it. Then if it is a Flower Cardian monster, you can special summon it ignoring its summoning conditions, and it can attack directly this turn. If you activated this effect, skip the draw phase of your next turn, and then the Cardian Tuner effect. In short, this is Upstart Goblin on legs. No matter what card you draw, you will always get to keep it, which is a huge plus. However, the fact that they made this draw effect a soft once per turn introduced the potential of completely breaking this card, and by extension, the entire archetype, with a certain card from the 5Ds era. You see, Desynchro is a normal spell that lets you return any Synchro monster into the extra deck before reviving that monster's Synchro materials, meaning you can literally abuse this draw effect over and over again, just as long as you kept using her as material to summon another copy of herself, while also making sure that the other materials have been properly summoned first. Also allowing Willow to recycle a Moonflower to draw a card also works to continue your broken draw combo. Because of this, many people will now forever associate this deck with being best buddies with Exodia because of how much one can abuse Moonflower's drawing effect. TLDR, this card is broken, always run 3. Now once again, many people thought that this was the end of their support, but we were sorely mistaken. As in Battles of Legend Armageddon, we would get what is, for now, the true last line of support in the form of 2 cards. The first of these 2 is Flower Cardian Cherry Blossom, the original. A level 3 with 100 attack and defense, and if you control a level 2 or lower Flower Guardian monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, also you can not normal or special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except Flower Guardian monsters. Once per turn, you contribute 1 Flower Guardian monster, draw 1 card and if you do, show it. Then, if it is a Flower Guardian monster, you can take 1 Flower Guardian monster from your deck, except Flower Guardian Cherry Blossom, and either add it to your hand or special summon it. Otherwise, send it to the graveyard. Finally! Another normal summon. And yes, while that is true, it also combos very well with Super Koi Koi, being a quick and easy monster to summon while still leaving your normal summon hopefully up to Pine. Also, I'd like to call it the archetypal Lone Fire Blossom, as with a simple tribute and successful draw, you get to continue your combo with either the summon of one of your key high-level Cardian monsters, or an add to your hand. On top of that, it's another target for Flower Gathering, so ratios of Polonia can now be decreased to 1 or 2 copies. However, if summoned off of Gathering, you still won't be able to get its tribute to draw effect off, even if you tribute itself. In whatever case, maxing out on it is the best way to go, but if you somehow can't max out, then play no less than 2. Their final card, at least for now, is Super All In, a normal spell with this effect. Return 1 Synchro monster you control to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon 4 Flower Cardian monsters from your graveyard, then draw 1 card and show it. Then, if it is a Flower Cardian monster, you can special summon it ignoring its summoning conditions. Otherwise, destroy as many monsters you control as possible, and if you destroyed at least 1, halve your life points. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there by the effect of a Flower Guardian monster this turn while in your possession, you can add 1 spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand. Why did they not make this card a hard once per turn in any way? It literally has FTK written all over it. For being an archetypal Synchro and soul charged wrapped into one, it sure lives up to its name of going all in for a high risk, high reward play. The best use for it though is to wait until you have Light Shower on the field or in your graveyard before activating it. That way you won't run the risk of nuking your own field should you happen to draw a non-Cardian monster. Its other effect of retrieving a spell or trap from the grave is kinda nice, albeit slow, but it still helps with getting back the most important spells you'd rather run in a Synchro deck like this, such as Pot of Avarice, Monster Reborn, or one of the Cardian themed spells. Run by preference and or build, but try not to max out on it if you can. When it comes to the strengths of Flower Cardians, their Synchro monsters really shine. Despite all of them having generic materials, the number of non-tuners needed to summon them is a huge turn-off in other Synchro decks. But certainly not here. Since the tuners can treat all Synchro material as level 2, it makes the Synchros super easy to summon, especially seeing how powerful their effects can be. From battle effect negation to locking out the opponent's graveyard for 2 turns, mass targeting and destruction protection to a literal free draw, the Synchros are near perfect for this archetype. They also have access to some extremely strong archetypal spell cards. Gathering being able to go +3 right off the bat is ridiculous already, but follow that up with one of the only legal instances of deck stacking and a pseudo Monster Reborn, most of which aren't hard ones per turns, and you've got yourself a combo deck that can really put pressure on your opponent. And once this deck gets rolling, their ceiling can be very high. With them being able to easily draw through the entire deck in just their first turn, Cardians can put up a ton of powerful Synchros with pretty low effort in the right hands. Plus, you don't need to worry about decking out, as Light Shower and Moonflower's effects of skipping your draw phase will have you covered. As for their weaknesses, where do I start? Even though they can be super explosive, there's very little consistency besides the combo starters. It also doesn't help that a vast majority of the main deck monsters are either too high a level to normal summon, or are semi-nomi monsters. Breaking with this deck happens far too often that it's not even funny. And even with that said, you're too heavily reliant on drawing into more Cardian monsters in order to extend your plays, making every Build-A-Bear combo you try to perform extremely luck-based outside of using flower stacking or getting a lucky mill of Recardination. While the Synchros are indeed powerful, they're your only win condition. Unless you can get rid of the problematic cards with a lucky draw with either Clover with Boar or Maple with Deer, getting locked out of your extra deck is almost guaranteed you an immediate loss. It also doesn't help that for a combo deck, this is one of the worst decks you could pick when going second. Aside from getting hit with turn 1 hand traps, going second with Cardians is a recipe for disaster. Without easy access to their tuner monsters, you can't make any additional plays. The spells are also one of their biggest selling points, so locking them out of their spells will also make the deck struggle. It's not impossible, but very unlikely to come back without some form of access to your spell cards. And even with that said, their ability to come back is virtually non-existent outside of some very lucky Cardian draws and the obvious staple of Monster Reborn. Because of how easily they can blow through at least 75% of their deck turn 1, you'll have used almost all of your resources into putting up that tremendous board of big synchros. And if your opponent is somehow able to crack that board, then you can just kiss that victory goodbye. Tips for this deck are admittedly a bit tougher to work with, since the only real way to play Cardians is to usually play pure builds, so the least I can do is provide a few tech options on what to include. Obviously, Allure of Darkness should be your go-to draw card due to the entire archetype consisting of dark monsters. Reinforcement of the Army works well as a search option for your low-level combo enablers, and Pot of Avarice to help with recycling your key Cardian monsters for further plays. As I already brought up with Moonflower Viewing, Desynchro should be ran in multiples because of how fantastic it is as a combo extender, since you can use Moonflower's draw effect over and over again, and potentially even Willow's recycling effect. Or, if you want to be super degenerate, then there's the option of the two FTK variants. One of them, of course, being Exodia, since it's so easy for Cardians to blitz through their entire deck in a single turn when abusing Moonflower's draw effect with Desynchro alongside Willow's recycling effect. Just be careful that you don't draw any Exodia pieces using the other Cardians' effects, and use Zebragrass and Willow's effects to your advantage to further get to your win condition. Alternatively, if you don't want to obliterate your opponent this way, then you can just burn them instead with Synchronized Realm, an older 5Ds card that burns your opponent for 500 damage whenever a monster is synchro summoned. So you know where this is going. Summon Moonflower a whole bunch, burn for 500, draw a card, desynchro back into the materials, rinse and repeat. And when it comes to the FTK builds, I'd recommend using the beginning of the end to further get to your win conditions, since you'll be flooding the graveyard with a ton of Cardian monsters. The extra deck is a little tougher since the deck works best going pure, but I can still make a few suggestions. Beelzo of the Diabolic Dragons is a potential late game synchro with low on resources for another Cardian synchro. Herald of the Arclight is a solid level 4 synchro in case you can't seem to get to your big Cardian synchro board. And as a spicy option, Muddy Mud Dragon as a level 6 to go into some wacky fusions such as Time Wizard of Tomorrow or even Shura the Conqueror Star. Yes, you'll need to get another monster on board first for Mud Dragon's fusion effect to resolve, but that shouldn't be too much trouble. Or if you're feeling up to it, then a handful of high rank Xyz monsters for the late game can also work, or even a rank 2 to go into if using Super Koi Koi. I have a serious love-hate relationship when it comes to Flower Cardians. On one hand, I hate it for how inconsistent and bricky it can often be, but on the other, I love how stupid it can get with the constant drawing effects just to get a board of big powerful synchro monsters that the opponent can't get rid of because they can't read the cards. I often find myself coming back to this deck every so often, and I sometimes don't understand why. Maybe it's the aesthetic and design of their synchros, or maybe it's because of their stupidly funny playstyle. Either way, I love this deck for what it can literally bring to the table, but I also hate it for the aforementioned reasons. Certainly a complicated relationship. Hey there everyone, I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you like this kind of content, then please consider liking the video and subscribing for more Yu-Gi-Oh content. As for my next Yu-Gi-Oh 101, I'm gonna leave it up to you. In the comments section, there'll be a pinned comment that will take you to a community poll of what you would like to see in the next Yu-Gi-Oh 101. The contenders are Drytron, Predaplants, and Valkyries. You can also comment in another archetype or deck of what you would like to see instead of these 3 options. I look forward to the end result. Until next time, this is Mr. Orichalcos, signing out.